it's amazing that as a species, we have reached a point that is so unloving toward ourselves, toward animals, toward the earth. Like it's like you couldn't have designed it in a way that is more exploitative and unloving. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. As a vegan, do you ever feel like you're living in a parallel universe, aware of things that many others don't even seem to notice, let alone acknowledge? I'm Chrissy Benson, host of the Vegan Posse Podcast. We talk with vegans from around the globe who, like you, are living lives of integrity and compassion with an eye toward justice. Through their personal stories, you'll come to see that you're not an outlier. In fact, you're part of an entire posse of individuals who aren't just keeping the peace, they're creating it through their food choices and beyond. You won't be saddling up, but you're in for the ride of your life. Welcome to the Vegan Posse. Hey Posse, I'm Chrissy Benson, host of the Vegan Posse, coming to you from snowy, icy, magical Music City, Nashville, Tennessee, where we just had a major snowstorm. If you're a regular part of the Vegan Posse, you'll know that we took a bit of a hiatus for the latter part of 2025, but we're kicking back into gear these days with regular, although not necessarily weekly, episodes. I've got just a few announcements. First, if you have not yet picked up a copy of the vegan women's fiction classic, Marrying Myself, by me, Christine Melanie Benson, what are you waiting for? It's a fun read with a vegan protagonist and a deeper message about the most important relationship we've got, the one we have with ourselves. And more importantly, by making Marrying Myself an Amazon bestseller, together we can normalize veganism through the arts, which honestly is my ultimate agenda. Visit my website, christinemelaniebenson.com, for all the information. Rest assured, however, that Marrying Myself won't be the last vegan novel you see from me. I'm deep into my next project, about which more will be revealed in due time. If you are aiming to more effectively navigate life, love, relationships, and or our not yet vegan worlds, I do offer personal coaching via Zoom. Email me directly at christinembenson@gmail.com for more info. Last but not least, this episode of the Vegan Posse is dedicated to my good friend Randy. Randy, know that you've got a posse, and a vegan one at that. This week, I am delighted to bring to you our regular monthly edition of Posse Talk with Jen Howk. As always, my friend and colleague, Dr. Jen Howk, and I go wide and deep, covering a whole lot of territory, raising more questions than answers, which is kind of what we do best. But first, I'd like to do a little check-in since it has been a while. As I've said time and time again, we vegans are at the forefront of an important, indeed, the most important social justice movement in human history. That's both an honor and a privilege. And it also comes with certain challenges. Yes, we're on the right side of history, but unfortunately, it's not yet history. It's history in the making. And it's quite possible, perhaps even probable, that we personally will not see eating and exploiting non-human animals relegated to the past. Nevertheless, I hold fast to my view that for all the human challenges, we vegans are the lucky ones. What do we eat? Well, we eat actual food rather than the products of torture and violence. We have nothing to apologize for. We get to live in alignment with our innate sense of compassion and empathy. And we have an internal peace that comes from not participating in systemic, institutionalized violence. The foods that we eat nourish and strengthen and heal our bodies rather than inflame and outrage and toxify them. It's simply not okay what's happening to the non-human animals in our so-called food system. And unfortunately, as long as that so-called food system is the norm, we will be the outliers. We better get used to it. And as much as we can, even enjoy it. And on that note, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts and experience on vegan recidivism. Do you have friends or family members who were once vegan but have since lapsed or left the fold? Maybe you yourself were once vegan but have since lapsed or left the fold. What happened and how do you navigate all of these dynamics? Email veganposse.email@gmail.com with any stories you'd like to share. And now enjoy this episode of Posse Talk with Jen Howk. Jen, welcome back to the Vegan Posse. This is our monthly series called Posse Talk, where my friends Dr. Jen Howk and I just kind of shoot the breeze about veganism, life, love, relationships, whatever else is on our mind. Sometimes we get questions. We're happy to answer questions for people. And sometimes we just chat and see what happens. Kind of like what I do when I write. I just start writing and stuff happens. So Jen, good to see you.
You too. Yeah, it's a week like this one where we really have no preconceived agenda. We're just absolutely shooting the breeze today. So.
Yeah, well, it's also, I'm not sure what the weather is like exactly in your neck of the woods, but here it's a little crazy. It's, yeah, a tree came down in my yard because of snow and ice. It didn't do any damage, but it looks kind of wild.
Man, yeah, this is yeah, we're recording this during the big snowpocalypse storm. So
Yeah.
it's been okay here so
Oh,
far. There's a
good.
lot of snow. And it sounds like it's more well, I was out shoveling a little bit ago and it was already starting to come down in more sleet form. So that's always when things get worrisome is when ice starts to build up on the trees. But so
Yeah.
far we've still had power, thankfully, and the roads look very treacherous, but I don't have to go anywhere today. So
Yes, I actually made it out for a run this morning,
oh
although
wow.
I switched up my route and I gave Daisy a break. I let her go back inside. And yeah, so
Yeah, my dogs were. There was a big nope when I saw the saw the snow this morning. Like, I'm sorry, you expect us to go out there? I'm like,
yeah,
no, no,
yeah.
thank you. And Lucy didn't even try. Lucy, snow's way over her head. She's a little tweeny, so
Aw.
she's just like, I will be peeing on the pee pad, thank you.
Well, I actually do have one item for an agenda of sorts. I've been getting some questions, and just people have been mentioning the new food pyramid.
Oh
Just
right.
wondering if you've looked into that and you have any thoughts or conspiracy theories about the food pyramid, which I mean, I think are probably completely valid.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can't say that anything about it is very surprising given sort of the intent of Make America Healthy Again and the chokehold that it has on this administration. And it's pretty much exactly what I would have expected that to look like. I mean, in some ways it could be worse, I suppose. At least it is emphasizing whole foods. But in the visual you don't see any beans, the visual is very much focused on meat and oil and dairy in particular. So I think the conspiracy theories are totally valid. It's the usual players with the usual influence combined with the current reigning ideology in Washington. You sort of combine all of those things and this is what you get. Every 5 years it's just a new flavor of bad. This is a pretty bad flavor of bad.
This is pretty bad. And it seems like the protein recommendations keep going up.
The protein, I thought a couple of years ago when Garth Davis wrote his book, the Proteinaholic book.
Proteinaholic. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought, okay, it's finally, protein mania has peaked. We have reached the limits of protein mania. Now we will be moving into a more sane state of affairs. But even in the vegan world, that's not true. And certainly not.
Right.
I just was talking to a client this morning about, sort of the protein obsession, and she's not 100% vegan, and so she's feeling this pressure to eat things like cottage cheese and Greek yogurt and these old classic Weight Watchers. Like these were the kind of foods that my grandma had in her fridge in the 80s. Like this was the kind
Mm-hmm.
of South Beach food. And it's just totally staging a comeback. And in the plant based world, there are a lot of people, especially I think women, who are looking at recommendations for eating more protein as they grow older. But a lot of those recommendations are based on having a very active lifestyle, doing a lot of heavy lifting, just being very, very active, which a lot of people are not. And they're still
Oh,
thinking,
really? I
yeah,
hadn't
I
noticed
know,
that.
shocking news at 11. But they're still looking at the recommendations, some of which are saying like, up to 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight, or some just ridiculous amounts of protein that nobody should be consuming. So it's been really disheartening to see that take back such control of the public imagination, including in the vegan world. So
Yeah, and the continued violence against carbs.
yeah, there is
The
violence against
all
carbs.
carbs are equal and carbs
Yeah.
are bad, protein good, the more the better.
Yeah, yeah. That's I just, it's in many ways it really is the same old song. Yeah, we just have. I remember hearing McDougall talk about this in the couple of years before he died. Like, there's really nothing new under the sun. It's still
Mhm.
low fat versus Atkins, just in a different. Everything just kind of changes its name and rebrands itself, but it's really just the same battle again and again, where it's carbs are evil and eat more bacon and rinse and repeat.
Yeah. Yeah, and the cognitive dissonance. I mean, I'm just struck all the time by the cognitive dissonance, the subsets of animals that of course we love, of course we care about, of course we want the best for them. And that even extends to chickens, backyard chickens.
Right.
Oh, we love these hens. We, love their eggs. Eggs are the perfect food. I'm not sure what happens to their male brothers who are born. Yeah, but my chickens have a great life. I love them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Until they can't lay eggs anymore. Then what do we do with them? Yeah.
and yeah, it was so interesting. There's a podcaster I follow who I really, really like, and that's what continues to be a theme. Is a lot of the more independent thinkers, the more outside the mainstream people with whom I align on, some ideological issues tend to be very anti-vegan, just not recognizing the inconsistency. Like, we want freedom for humans, but where do we practice all these behaviors of enslavement and normalize the otherization of living sentient beings? Well, of course we do it with animals. And it was so interesting. I was listening to, an interview with a person who became a homesteader in Russia, in this remote town in Russia. And it was this fascinating account. And he talked about getting some hens, of course, with the eggs, and then getting into dairy cows. Unfortunately, it just happens that the cows that kept being born were male. So that was unfortunate, because that wasn't helpful, obviously, for dairy. No mention of, okay, well, what happened to those male calves? Just very interesting. And I know, actually, listening to that, one of my forms of activism that I do, or used to do more of, is writing letters to editors, or just letters to people. And so, listening to this episode, because in the same episode, this person was talking about the dogs who lived on the farm and the cats, and how much they loved them, and how wonderful they were, and how they just embody what love actually is, and how much we can learn from these creatures who share the earth with us. And then in the next breath, oh, it's unfortunate that the cows being born were male. Just, again, the dissonance from really intelligent people. That's what I always find disheartening. Yeah. What have you got to say to solve this problem, Jen?
To solve it, I don't know. I don't know. I can say that I've experienced the same. I follow someone that I admire her a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with Celia Celia. I can't remember her last name suddenly offhand. It's been too many things in my head this morning. But she was one of I think she contributed to RFK's Fauci book, and she wrote a book about the HIV crisis called Serious Adverse Events, and she's been in this space. She's a major figure in the kind of COVID critical movement, and
Hmm.
she has an interesting newsletter which I subscribe to, and she always has interesting things to write about and say. And she's very passionate when she encounters um, like a lost animal or she has a friend who runs a kind of a backyard rescue operation for feral cats in Spain, and she'll write really these impassioned things about these animals and how callous people are, and they throw these animals away and they disregard them. But then she'll also put out a newsletter about basically embracing a carnivore diet, or how she's balanced her hormones with this very high animal food diet, and that she's very maha in that sort of specific way. And the dissonance just doesn't seem to enter the chat. Like she's clearly very intelligent. She's clearly very passionate about animal welfare when it comes to specific animals, and her own pets, of course. She's incredibly loving toward her cats, and I just don't get it, man. I know we've had this conversation before. I don't understand how someone can compartmentalize like that. It just does not make
Um,
sense to me. I've never been able to do that since I was a kid. My vegetarianism began to my recollection, when I first made the connection between farm animals and my pets. Like I just like these are the same. Like this
yeah,
hamburger and the petting zoo that I just went to, and my cat at home, I see no difference here. I can't draw some invisible line where I eat these and love
yeah,
these. And that just I think that is an ethics that is innate to human beings, and we have to go through some pretty impressive mental gymnastics to close ourselves off from that innate wisdom. So
yeah. Well, it sounds like you have a letter to write as well.
yes, I probably do. Probably do. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I don't mean to pick on her in particular, but she's just kind of the first example that comes to mind because of.
Yeah. It's just, again, I find it disheartening is like really what happens because, yes, these people that I do genuinely admire and respect in many ways. And again, just I always have to remind myself, okay, this is how it is when you are at the forefront of a social justice movement. You are an outlier and just get over it and, just do the best you can.
There
Yeah.
was there's a really, I mean, in addition to the protein thing, I can't remember if it was in the Atlantic or some pretty big outlet just ran an article about kind of, has veganism peaked sort of thing. And it was looking at these various metrics of vegan restaurants and how many vegan restaurants are closing in urban centers, and just how hard COVID was on veganism in general.
Mhm.
And that definitely there does seem to have been this bubble that has burst in terms of vegan businesses, vegan restaurants. A lot of the alternative meat companies have gone belly up, and that momentum and that energy that was there 6 or 7 years ago is just really not there now.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it is. I relate more and more to all of those. I remember 6 or 7 years ago hearing John McDougall talk about how discouraging it had been for him to feel in the mid 80s that he was on this rising trend where people were waking up and they were embracing the diet, and
Mhm.
Ornish was so well known and all of these things, and then you just go back into the sort of carbophobia of the 90s, and the return to Atkins and all of that. And so I guess this is just how it is in some way. There is an ebb and a flow to these movements. There is a kind of a dimension to it that is a cultural fad to some degree, and that things come and go. It's not a linear process, but hopefully.
Have you read any of Norm Phelps's books? He wrote a book. He's written a number of books, but one that I read was called Changing the Game. And
Oh, okay.
essentially it examines, veganism as the animal rights movement. And it
Hmm.
was it was fascinating to me, also a bit a bit discouraging for sure, but just kind of examining other social justice movements and drawing comparisons or just highlighting the things that are unique to the animal rights movement. And one of the points that really stayed with me was he talked about how in the movement to end human slavery, it didn't succeed by convincing the Southerners that slavery was wrong. The people whose livelihoods and economy,
Yeah.
you know, was
Right.
based in this enslavement economy. They convinced Northerners who did not have the same economic interest in this whole institution that slavery was wrong. And then Northerners, were able to, partly out of their own, self interest in just, they didn't have anything to lose essentially by proclaiming moral indignation at what was being done to the Africans who'd been brought here. And he points out, Norm Phelps in this book, he points out that with veganism, unfortunately, there's no like group of people
No
that
conscientious.
doesn't have an interest in
Yeah.
the enslavement of non-human animals. Everybody's eating them. Uh, everybody's eating them. So there's no like convenient group of people that we can just rally and say, well, you're not doing it anyway. So like, let's let's get together and point out to the people who are doing it how wrong it is. That's not an option. So yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, I do see that there's, you know, it's not as if things rise and fall and you have these trends come and go with no progress at all. I think it's very much more in the public awareness and consciousness, like veganism as an idea and as a lifestyle, and all of that is, it's much easier. There's a lower threshold for entry, and also just it's more socially
Hmm.
tolerated now than it was 10 years ago, certainly much more than 20 years ago when I first was going vegan. It's like the totally different world.
Hmm.
There are many more substitutes on the market, and also just it's penetrated the kind of collective consciousness in a different way than it had before. So
Agreed. Yeah.
so even though you may not see, one of the points that this article made is that the number of people who are vegan has stayed pretty stable. You still have this like 1% of the population, which has been the same 1% of the population for 20 or 30 years. Like that's not really
Mm.
increasing, but there more seeds are planted, awareness does increase, and I can see making an argument that that contributes towards some sort of future tipping point that maybe we don't get to see anytime soon or even in our lifetimes, but it's still very important to continue moving it forward and to continue
Yeah.
spreading that consciousness, because you don't know at what point it
Yeah.
tips or what might tip it over, which I think is probably very similar to slavery in a lot of ways.
Yeah. 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 I think that's kind of where I end up landing as well, is that we just don't know, and we have to somehow make some peace with the fact that, we just don't know. And often it seems as if our role is not effective in the slightest, but nevertheless, we have to do it. So I'll pull out that quote, that Albert Camus quote that I often pull out, which he did not say in regard to animal rights, to my knowledge, but he said it with regard to other social justice movements, and he said, "Our task is impossible, so let us begin."
Right, right, right.
Like, what
Yes.
what else can we do?
We must do it
What else can we
anyway.
do?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's I think it's very difficult psychologically for to expect humans to make a sacrifice or a perceived sacrifice in, in the current moment for a benefit that is uncertain or unpredictable or may not come to fruition in their lifetime. It's
yeah,
We're just not really built for that sort of investment. I think the
Yeah.
exception to that is like you try to make a better world for your children. But you know, a lot of people in the vegan movement in particular don't have children. People are having fewer and fewer kids. There's less of that kind of built into how we orient toward time and the arc of our lives in general, and that is also a challenge. So
Yep.
I
Yep.
don't know that it's none of this is a deal breaker, but it is, you know, we're living in a difficult time, and all we can do is kind of hold the line that at some point, should human civilization persevere, which I don't know at this point, but should it maintain itself at some point, some future iteration of human society will look back on the the way that we treat and consume animals as just incredibly barbaric. We know that that is teleologically true in some sense. And so, whatever the timeline is for that, I have to be agnostic about that and just do the
Hmm.
right thing for the sake of doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And with regard to people having kids, I mean, I think that can be a tipping point in a negative way for some people who they're vegan, they believe in it, but they're just not comfortable raising their kids
But totally,
vegan.
that happens
And
a lot.
then, I have, you know, a close friend who was vegan and now no longer is vegan. And, my inference is that part of it had to do with the family dynamic. I think that's a big issue, especially in these times too, is the kind of identity politics with regard to veganism, as well as a lot of things. Like, a lot of people don't, even vegans seem to be getting off on bashing other vegans
Yeah,
and just talking about how much they hate vegans. Like, oh, I'm vegan because I care about the animals, but vegans suck. Like, they're no fun. They suck to hang around. They're self-righteous. And so a lot of I see a lot of identity politics happening around veganism. And then also that false dichotomy between, okay, are you going to eat real meat or fake meat? Like where do you align? And like, it's just such a
it's all, and
silly
that
choice.
too
Yeah.
is like, oh my gosh, can we not move on from these tropes of masculinity? And you
Yeah.
know, like, it's just so much of it is just there's nothing new under the sun. We feel like we've been through
Yeah.
this, we fought this battle, we, you know,
Yeah.
Carol Adams wrote her amazing work, like we've been educated, we know, and yet here we
Right.
are still. If you go on Twitter, you find these just like ridiculous rhetoric around real men eat real meat kind of stuff. Is, have we not have we not transcended this yet? But no, apparently not.
Yeah.
Nobody has.
Obviously we have not. Well, I'm really curious for T. Colin Campbell's new book, because when he wrote the China study, he thought that that would actually change things. And, he'd done a whole explication of how you can't artificially separate certain, identified nutrients from food and predict the results. And instead, they asked him to, like, they used his work to come up with, the RDAs for certain vitamins. I mean, just the polar opposite of what he intended or tried to disclose. But yeah, he really thought that things would change in medicine. Again, I say this all the time, but it blows my mind that Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine.
Right.
And yet doctors take the Hippocratic Oath
Yeah, they skip that part.
and they skip that part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 They also skip the do no harm part.
Yeah,
They're
for
kind of
sure.
they're kind of
For
skipping the
sure.
whole thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's I don't know, human nature. It's kind of human
It
nature.
is interesting though. The thing, I haven't read that Atlantic article. I'm going to have to seek that out because now I'm curious. But I do, yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot about veganism. I'm not on social media much, so I don't really think about like veganism in terms of the coolness or the hipness or like, how in it is. I just don't think about it too much. But now that you're bringing up these things, yeah, I can see, just, glossing back over my experience over the past few years. Yeah, I definitely don't feel like veganism is cool anymore. Like, and I think I did at a certain point. Like I did kind of feel that I was kind of part of the, a cool club. Yeah, it's very interesting. Maybe part of it too is the place. Well, I live in Nashville, Tennessee, of course, which is Nashville's pretty good on veganism, but Tennessee in general, and then especially among this burgeoning kind of homesteading, freedom-minded sector, again, with whom I align on a lot of things, but they are just ardently anti-vegan. I mean, livestock, having your own animals, like that's freedom, that's empowerment. Like, oh right, not for them. Not for your physical body, not for your spirit, but
Yeah. And it's
okay. Yeah.
ironically like like the homesteaders are particularly frustrating because you've got a bunch of livestock on your farm that is not a self-sufficient system in most cases. I mean, most small farms are not producing enough hay to feed those animals. They're not producing the feed that they need to bring in. They're, there's all kinds of additional fossil fuels and everything else to kind of maintain that self-sufficient lifestyle, where with veganic farming it really is a self-contained.
Mhm.
You have all of the organic matter and the nutrients going back into the soil. It's all right there within the system. And so it's always sort of a sticking point for me to have it be like, well, I want to be independent from the government and I want to do my own thing, and that means I'm going to grow my chickens that I bought at Tractor Supply, and then I'm going to bring the chickens back to a coop that I built with a whole bunch of unsustainably milled lumber and whatever else I used to build it. And then I'm going to truck in truckloads, bales of hay and animal feed and other supplies to keep them warm and safe. And then I'm going to slaughter them and eat them. And then I'm going to do it all again. It's just, it doesn't make any sense to me as an actual sustainable self-contained system. If you're at total scale, if you're someone like Joel Salatin, who, you've got, the whole farm does include your fields for hay harvest and everything, but you got tractors, you're burning fossil fuels for that, you're doing all these things. It doesn't make any sense to me from sort of a veganic permaculture perspective, where you can work with nature, you can build a system that sustains itself with or without your inputs, and it's fertilizing itself as it goes through its seasonal cycles, no problem. So you don't need
Yeah.
animals to contribute to that. You don't need animals to improve it. You can direct wild animals in particular ways that do bring more, like I welcome the deer poop that comes into this yard. That's fine. And the sort of the way that they will um stomp on the ground and sort of do a little bit of tilling for me, like that's great. You can incorporate wild animal presence in that way, but I don't have to
Mhm.
have pastured animals to do that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's a little
Yeah. I mean,
stupid.
I'm sure a lot of people just feel and are subject to the system that's in place, which is so widespread and so extensive. I mean, not in terms of these small homesteading farms, but I was, as part of research for the current book I'm working on, which is fiction, but nevertheless, I was researching some factual points, and I was looking up the most profitable vegetable crop in Tennessee, and it was soy, far and away. Number one was soy, and then corn and wheat. And I asked ChatGPT, what is the soy used for? And of course, it's used for, livestock. And so all of these, and the corn as well, and the corn also used in processed foods. So it's just so interesting. But it said that those are far and away the most profitable for farmers. And so if you are a farmer, it's just crazy that that's, what people are incentivized to grow. And you're the gardener. I don't know a lot about agriculture, but I know that monocropping has lots of problems to it, lots of disadvantages.
Yeah,
It's just yeah.
monocropping might not even have all the disadvantages it has if they just like allowed that plant material after the harvest to go back into the soil, but they don't. They sort of like, they clear the whole. Well, first of all, everything's sprayed heavily. Those are
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
GMO crops. They're all
Right, right, right.
incredible. They're sprayed within an inch of their life. I can't grow corn here without it being just a beacon to every bird in the neighborhood that, like, look what's here, come eat the corn. I mean, it's an incredibly attractive crop. And so you've just got to spray the bejesus out of it to make
Mm,
it sustainable. And so you've
mm,
just laid waste to this whole crop area. And
mm,
they don't, for the most part, even till back in the compost that's left behind after the harvest. They just clear it all out, they sweep it all out, and then they till the soil again, and then they plant it with a new crop. And it's unbelievable that we've been doing this for so long. I just was reading the One Straw Revolution, which
mm.
is this
What's that?
classic in the kind of sustainable agriculture, permaculture space, written by this Japanese farmer who is just kind of talking about our relationship to the environment, having a reclaiming a more intuitive relationship to nature and to
Mm,
growing. So
mm,
every growing area is different. You can read books about this is how you're going to grow corn, or this is how you're going to grow an apple tree, but really he's making a case that the wisdom comes from going and standing outside where you want to plant that apple tree and like attuning yourself like an antenna to the natural system, and
mm,
you have this built-in capacity to understand exactly what the needs of any plant in your little micro ecology are. And we're just so divorced from that. And there's
mm,
a lot more to it. One of the interesting points in that book was he was talking about a tour that he took to California, and this was in the mid 80s, and he said, yeah, these Californians are all eating like the Japanese used to. They're eating all this rice and all these vegetables, and they're just like this because he was in the middle of the McDougall kind of
mm,
health
mm,
craze of that time.
mhm,
And so he was predicting all these great things for the future health of Americans because they had
mm,
discovered the value of fruits and vegetables. Little did
mm.
he know. But yeah, he's very much kind of talking about the lack of sustainability in the systems, and just yeah, what are we doing? What is this
Well, it
like?
must be sustainable because we've been doing it for so long. So,
Oh, that's why I brought him up, because he's writing in the mid '80s, talking about sort of animal agriculture to some degree. He blames kind of all desertification and environmental destruction on animal farming, even though he himself, I don't think, was ever 100% vegan, but he understood the role that animal agriculture was playing in the system. And writing in the '80s, he was predicting that within 15 years or so the whole system was going to collapse, because you can't keep doing this slash and burn treatment of these croplands in the Midwest without eventually completely depleting the soil. And you're using all the artificial fertilizer. I mean, we're not growing any of these crops from actual nutrients in the soil anymore. It's all artificial fertilizer, but that fertilizer is built from the nutrients, kind of the core nutrients that we've identified as necessary for plant growth, but none of the little trace minerals and everything else that you get in the soil. So it's just the NPK. We're going to grow it. We're going to grow it big. It's going to be juicy. It's going to look good on the shelf. But they're just completely. It's this is not the food of your ancestors. It's not the food that you can grow in your home garden if you're constantly putting the nutrients back into the soil and
mhm.
using have a good compost system, peeing on it once in a while, all the good things that we should be doing. So yeah, just I was struck by his prediction that this is a ticking time bomb, that by the year 2000 this whole thing is going to go under, and here we are still lurching along as if it's going to last forever, but we're on totally borrowed time.
Well, and not just lurching along, but actually recommending that people consume more protein. We're already consuming more protein per capita than humans have ever in their human history consumed.
More
And we're
we're
saying
getting
we need more. People need more.
fed by these unsustainable staple crops. It's such a it's amazing that as a species we have reached a point that is so unloving toward ourselves, toward animals, toward the earth. Like it's like you couldn't have designed it in a way that is more exploitative and unloving. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. 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 No, if we had set out to create a completely sociopathic food
Yeah.
system,
Yeah.
so-called food system, yeah, we could not have succeeded more monumentally.
Go
Yeah.
USA, USA.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not just us. I mean, it's the whole globe, but
Well, it's a lot of us. We're exporting our, techniques and methods and torture devices
and
to
our health crisis and
and
our
our health crisis.
obesity
Yeah.
and everything else,
Yeah.
we're exporting that too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's disheartening. So I mean, well, how do you stay strong? How do you kind of, keep putting one foot in front of the other?
I think I focus on the little microsystem. I mean, I do this time of year in particular. I'm looking forward to growing my own stuff, learning more about how I can improve this little part of the world. If I can, this year I'm planting some oak trees because I went through this whole obsession with oak trees back. When would I have ordered these trees? It was back in September or something, where I was just learning about oaks and how amazing oaks are. And I don't have any oaks at this property in Virginia. I have several in the West Virginia property. And they're just extraordinary trees. And of course, the acorns are perfectly edible for humans and all kinds of other critters as well. And an oak tree can support 500 different species of insect that are obligate to the oak tree. Like if you don't have an oak tree in your yard, you won't have those insects in your yard. So they that's the larval host for these caterpillars or whatever kind of insect you've got there. 500 different species. And so the fact that I don't have one in sight here, I ordered I think 10 from the Virginia Department of Forestry.
Well, do you want all those insects around though?
Oh
I mean, what's the
yeah.
advantage of having all
Yeah.
those insects?
I mean, there's a permaculture axiom that, you never have like people have problems with their snails in the garden. Snails will eat their lettuce and
Yeah.
take over the garden. And so the saying is you don't have too many snails, you have a duck deficiency. So the system is not balanced. You don't have
Mhm.
like the big bugs to eat the little bugs. When my
Yeah.
first year in West Virginia, I had a ton of Japanese beetles. They were feasting on all of my stone fruit trees. So they were just
Mhm.
like defoliating all of the peach trees and the cherry trees. And after the first year, they have not been an issue, I think, because I let the place grow wild. And so there's this return of all these other insects, including a lot of bald faced hornets. I see their nests in the wintertime. And when the trees are clear and you can see these enormous nests, but those guys will just cruise around and eat, Japanese beetles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner all day long. And
Mm.
so it
Mm.
is, it's kind of, yes, if I have an oak tree, first of all, it's going to take years and years and years to grow its full canopy. It's not full grown for 20 or 30 years. And so there's a lot of time for the environment to adjust and for those insects to
Mm.
move in. But it's also just kind of the general faith that the system will balance itself if I create habitat for as much as possible. So my job is just, how can I diversify the habitat, have as many different, I planted a bunch of milkweed also because that's the only thing that monarch butterflies will lay their eggs
Mm.
on.
Mm.
And there's no milkweed. So,
Mm.
I just, any native plant that I know has co-evolved with a particular species or multiple species, I'm going to plant it. And then, yeah, there might be a year or two where things are kind of out of balance. I've got an excess of these guys, a deficiency of these guys, but I trust that over time, like my pond, which used to be a pool, it's like I've abandoned it as a pool and let it turn into a pond. It's a huge frog like disco. There's so many frogs that hang out there all summer, and the frogs eat the mosquitoes, so you don't have too many mosquitoes in the pond. It's like all these things balance
Mhm.
out. So it's imperfect, but that is how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
And so I just embrace, how can I improve this? What more can I learn about what I can plant, and how I can get myself individually further off dependence on the grid and on the food system, and just, make that tiny difference that I can on my own.
Hmm.
That's really the only thing that I find, especially the older I get, that I can put energy into and feel like all of that energy is well spent.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. You're making me really just like feel this burning desire for my own land, my own, households, all of that. I've been renting my entire adult life due in part to being in huge cities where buying real estate was trickier. But yeah, you're making it
Yeah,
sound very desirable.
a little patch of land where you can just like buck the system a little bit is and
Yeah.
not do that sort of influencer homestead thing where, oh, I bought some land, so the first thing I'm going to do is build a chicken coop and get some chickens. Like, dude,
Yeah.
you know, I
Yeah.
am open to having chickens because of all of those roosters that are rejected because people buy the cute little chicks at Tractor Supply and then they realize,
Yeah.
oh no, I've got three roosters, they're useless to me.
Right.
And so they just, I don't know, set them off into the woods or they let them grow large enough to fry them up. And so, I can see myself at some point, if I had a secure place for them, rescuing both
Yeah.
retired
Yeah.
hens and unwanted roosters. But
Right. Right.
I need to have a little more free time to manage that and
Sure.
to build a really solid coop because everybody tries to get to chickens. It's really
Yeah.
hard to get to
And then
chickens.
the only thing, yes, and I'm totally with you. And the only concern that I always think of is that poses a not just a risk, but a certainty of confusing people. Well, she's vegan and she has chickens,
Right. Right. Yeah. Well,
it's, you know,
what do
yeah,
you do
people,
other
yeah,
than
what are you going to do? What are you going
message
to do?
like, yeah, they're rescue fucking chickens. Like they're
Yeah.
chickens that my
Yeah.
neighbor has
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
trying to, and I see the posts on Facebook all the time. With the community Facebook, people are like, oh, anybody, want these chickens? We're moving. I don't want my chickens anymore. And it's just, what's going to happen to these guys. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there may be a little bit of confusion with the purity of the messaging, but it's sort of similar to, I'm not too, I think in my younger vegan days, I was very judgmental about people who would wear leather shoes that they'd found at a thrift store, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would never do that. But I now I'm not going to be too judgy about that. It's not going to be something I seek out. But I would not rule that out as a possibility if I found some thrifted leather or wool. In fact, I do have some thrifted wool sweaters.
Yeah.
So I think it's an imperfect world, and also these things, to keep them out of the dump and to give them another life, is the higher good in my view.
Right, right. Those are luxury moral issues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, just in our final couple of minutes, any quick thoughts or impressions about the relations among vegans these days? I feel like there's just a lot of infighting, even more so than usual.
I don't know. You must be more plugged into that than I am. I definitely see some of that in the plant-based world, but not, those are all just the usual
Okay.
conflicts. But
Yeah.
I'm not tuned into what's going on in the vegan world. What's the
Well, I'm not referring to anything specific. I just feel like I've been hearing a lot of vegans talk about not wanting to identify as vegan, not they're I'm not that kind of vegan. Like I'm not the annoying kind of vegan. I hate vegans. They're self-righteous and but okay. It's just
Yeah, I mean,
my
I'm
yeah.
not skeptical at all that that's happening, but it hasn't come into my social media feed.
Yeah.
My social
Okay.
media feed is consumed with, the collapse of civilization. The fact that
Yeah. Yeah.
we're hurtling towards civil war, so we got lots of stuff going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah. And I just, again, I really think that Will Tuttle, his book, The World Peace Diet, just does such a phenomenal job of just pointing to like all the things that we do to animals, we inevitably end up doing to humans. And
Yeah,
boy, is that happening now.
yeah,
Um, it's
yeah.
on a fast track. Yeah. It's scary. I'm
I
with
think
you. I'm
we all
with you.
need to
All right. Well, on that happy note, we'll wrap it up. We will conclude with 30 seconds of silence for all the suffering animals, human and non human, who desire, as we all do, safety, happiness, and the freedom to live out their lives without interference. So, Jen, I invite you to join me in 30 seconds of silence for the animals. Thank you, Dr. Jen Howk, and thank you, Posse. See you next time. Until then, stay strong and stay true.
Thanks, Chrissy.